Hello, beautiful soul family. Rebecca here, your vibe mentor, bringing you another video for Monday Magic Intuitive Energy Reading. I am excited as always to be here with you. Monday is usually my favorite day. I love doing this video for you simply because I love tapping into the energy and just taking that time to sit with what is it that we're experiencing and how do we dance to the music that is currently being played. This video today is going to be a little bit different. I am going to speak about some things I don't typically speak about, which is a bit of a departure. Certainly, we're going to talk about the energy, but wrapped up in the energy is an undeniable theme of what is going on out in the world that cannot be ignored or denied. Although I don't always believe that giving it focus and attention is the way to address it, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So before I do, let's talk a little bit about just kind of what last week was like, because it was pretty intense. It was very interesting that there was a lot of fatigue. There was a lot of heaviness. There was a very heavy and even dark energy about the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was very, very heavy and dense to the point that I posted in our community, not sure what's up, but have an eye out for what's going on. Know that it's not just you. It very much felt like spiritual warfare. It felt like there was a darkness and a heaviness that was really looking to get at us. And I have found that feeling, while it's not always that, there's a dark energy after us necessarily, they usually correlate to solar flares or solar activity. And what's really interesting for me personally is I feel them so early that there's no reading on the charts yet to confirm that that is what's happening. And so, of course, I usually wait until there is that scientific evidence to validate what it is that we are experiencing. Of course, this time I did not. I posted in our community because I wanted people to know that whatever they were going through, one, you're not alone, and two, there's a reason for it. So I think I posted that. I have to look back to be sure exactly when I did, but that was probably midweek. And sure enough, the evidence showed up by Friday. So on February 17th, they recorded a record-breaking solar flare, a 2.28 X-class solar flare. This is the strongest solar flare that we have had in the last 2 years. The record previously was a 2.2, so that 2.28 is what broke the record. And it certainly did take a toll on us. So what's I find fascinating is some people just don't feel this. And my speculation around that would be sensitivity. If you're a highly sensitive person, highly empathic, likely you're going to sense that if you have cleansed your body, if you refrain from processed foods and alcohol, caffeine, things of that nature. Sugar especially can be very desensitizing. So if you are cleansed and purified in the vessel, you likely are going to feel these things, and maybe even as early as a couple days before they register on the measurements with NASA and things of that nature. So it is very fascinating that we are so sensitive that we sense it before it registers. But know that you may be in either of those camps, whether you sense it early or just sense it the day it's registering. You may not be. There are also people who do not feel it at all. So know that likely they're feeling and just don't really see it as any different from any other day. If your life is always difficult, then it is going to be different or difficult to differentiate. What I also found very interesting about that, along with the fatigue and that feeling of everything being difficult or hard, there's also, and this, they go hand in hand, is that feeling of everything feels like it's difficult. It comes because, or partially because, our bodies are already dealing with a lot more than normal. And what I did notice too was the nervous system was very easily alarmed, right? We were very close to that fight or flight trigger point where it was easier for us to feel activated, to feel rushed, to feel stressed, to feel hyper vigilant. The body was tense. Sometimes I'll have tension in the shoulders, but a little bit of stretching and it'll release. But last week, consistently all throughout the week, my muscles were very tense and that was not letting go. And again, it was very interesting that finally, after it registered with NASA, that's when I felt the release. And that was when my body started to calm, my muscles relaxed. And even add to it, there's lots of interesting things about this reading today. Add to it, today is a new moon in Pisces at 1 degree. And so what that means is that the moon was approaching Pluto, or even sitting on top of Pluto in those moments that we were experiencing that solar flare, or just after in the weekend here. And so now it's finally crossed over. We have passed Pluto. And so there's a bit of a release. It's also very typical with, not always, but typical with a new moon to feel lower energy. So it'll be curious to see how this plays out, considering we had such low energy last week. But with the new moon today, there is no light. So the absence of light will leave us feeling a little bit more fatigued than normal. That is very normal and natural. And then it usually takes about 2 to 3 days after the new moon for that light of the moon to come back, and where we start to feel energized again. That being said, I already feel a sense of amplification, or the momentum picking up. I was starting to feel that last week. There is a sense of something building. I've been saying this for many, many months and weeks now. I think since September, October last year, I was pointing to March. March is just around the corner. We're in our last full week of February this week, and this sense of what is just around the corner. All I can explain it, or the only way I can explain it, is sort of this butterflies or anticipation in my stomach, right? This feeling of nervousness. And it is not typical anxiety. This is definitely anticipation for what is to come. Now, this is where I kind of want to go into what I mentioned earlier, speaking about things that I don't typically speak about. I tell my story, or part of my story, here and there throughout videos on this channel, but this one's a little bit different. And I kind of want to explain to you, or preface what I'm about to say before I say it, so you can understand at least where I'm coming from. And my intention is to sort of buffer this for those who may not agree, or who may feel that it might rub you the wrong way. So I grew up in a very Christian home. My father was a minister. He took it to the extreme. He was very extreme is the word for it. He would create rules and regulations and mechanisms of power and control even greater than the typical pastor or priest or religious figure. He took his beliefs, and it really was about power and control, to such a level that it was traumatic for our family, that we were not allowed to listen to secular music. We were not allowed to watch TV. We didn't have friends outside the church. We went to school in the church school, which oftentimes had very few kids. I was lucky if there was ever one my own age. I felt very much like I lived in a prison. That at one point, my house was directly connected to the church via a sidewalk. I would walk a few hundred feet from my house to the church, and that was my life, between this building this church building and my home. And it very much felt like a compound. And the beliefs of the church were used to his benefit, to control not only his family, but the people in the church, that they were often guilted into doing what he felt would serve him or the church. And it was always hidden or disguised under the claim that it was for God or the church, or that they're tithing. He would go after people who didn't tithe. Or at one point, he very much believed in divorce and remarriage as a sin, and so he would try to break up couples who had been divorced and remarried, and told them they had to go back to their original spouses. And there was a lot of destruction, not only in my life, but in the people's lives that he touched in that time. And so sort of fast forward, a tumultuous childhood. We left him. There was an abusive stepfather in between there. Eventually I ended up out on my own at 16. And there was a point I remember very clearly looking at my life consciously and saying, I am walking away from God and the church. And it was a conscious decision that I made. And I will never forget that day. And I am not exactly sure why it stands out so clearly. I guess I should not question that now. We'll get to that in a minute. But in my searching and in my seeking, and I didn't jump directly into metaphysics from there, but there was sort of an emptiness. There was a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of coping mechanisms. Eventually, alcohol became my coping mechanism of choice. This desire to be a good person, to do the right thing, codependency, self-sacrificing, overgiving, people pleasing, things of that nature, lots of narcissism. There was just a very difficult path. And so I began seeking for something, a solution that was going to make it better. Right. And I didn't understand psychology or neurobiology or, my body and how, the food that I was eating. At 14 years old, the first job I was eligible to get was McDonald's. And so, of course, that started a path of destruction for my body. And I never understood any of it. And the first thing that I sort of opened my eyes to, or that opened my eyes to things outside of what I can physically see and touch, was astrology. And it started to make sense and it gave me answers. And I could understand that I had gone, or I was in at the time, let's see, how old was I? I was in at the time when I discovered astrology. I was in my Saturn return, 27-ish, 28 years old, about the time my son was born. And it gave me answers. It made sense, right? And then I remember meeting a woman who claimed she could speak to trees. And I literally prayed in my bed that night, dear God, please don't let me go crazy. This is so weird. What is going on? It doesn't make any sense. I don't want to be that person. And yet I continued down the metaphysical path. And I was always very cautious around dark energy, magic. I've always been very sensitive, a trauma response. If you know me or you know my work, you know that our high sensitivity and empathy is a trauma response, which actually ends up being a good thing. So there are certain things that just sort of grate on my nervous system that tell me this is not good. And throughout that time of just sort of, you could say, dabbling with energy, I got to sort of, I sharpened the skill of discernment or differentiation, sort of feeling into where is this coming from and what does it feel like? Does it feel good or does it feel yucky? And I know that's not a technical term, but that's the term in my body that sort of started to differentiate between places I wanted to go and places I didn't. And eventually I came to a place where I realized that spirit or source or the creative energy or dark matter or consciousness is God. And it's a strange place to be in my current state. The ways, if I had to identify myself or label myself, which I'm not real crazy about, but I would say I very much am a spiritual but not religious person. And the reason I say that is because I do not agree with the power struggles. I do not agree with the corruption in the church. Most of all, I cannot stand the organizations that abuse children behind their robes. I'm not going to go into that, but there is some very serious, disgusting things that happen in organized religions that are not okay. And I'm not okay with that. But to throw out everything because of those bad people or bad choices, ultimately, everyone inherently should have the potential to be good. Anyways, we won't go down that path. It would be throwing out the baby with the bathwater to exclude God or Christ or the Bible because of the men and women who do things they shouldn't. And so what that means is I go to church. I put my kids in a private Christian school. There are foundational elements that are being given to my children, and I am being nourished when I go to that place on Sunday, because it's my relationship with my creator, not my relationship with my pastor. And we won't even go into that. But the point is, I would identify as someone who believes in God. I would identify as someone who believes in energy. I would identify as a professional. I would identify as a scholar. I'm pursuing a master's degree. Now you can see how all of those things seem like oil and water. They don't really make sense. I'm not a hippie. I don't, right? We don't want to go into all of the qualifications. The point is that there's many of us out there who are bridging a gap right now. And it can be difficult as someone who produces content and videos and shares opinions and life experience. It can be difficult because the world sort of, if you look at algorithms, they want to put you in a box. They want to put you in under a label. And it doesn't always work that way. And I promise you, I'm getting back to the energy. All of this is to preface what I'm about to say, that I have to calm my nervous system here, touch back into the energy, reground. There are approaches that I utilize to bring messages that are softened in a way so that the eyes and the ears of those who are listening and hearing and watching are able to remain open. Their hearts are able to remain open. It is necessary sometimes for me to take a psychological perspective. It is necessary for me sometimes to take a metaphysical perspective, although I prefer not to even fall under that label. It is time or necessary for me at times to take, you could say, a spiritual approach, a God approach. And there is a fine line when delivering these messages that we remain authentic, and there's a bravery required to show up and to speak my truth in a way that is not going to get me kicked off of the platform, and also going to land and register and be absorbed by and truly heard by the listener. And to balance that is tricky. And when I get in my head about it and I ask the question, how do I present myself, or how do I deliver this message so that I don't offend someone or turn someone off? That's the problem. And there are plenty of people out there who will make fun of spiritual people. There are plenty of people out there who would have a heyday with the debate over whether or not God exists. There are professionals and scholars who would say to be spiritual is unprofessional. But all of that being said, I have to speak my truth, and I have to share with you what I know in my being I am experiencing. And whether or not you experience that is up to you and where you are at and the beliefs you choose. And this is the fascinating part, is especially as those of us who have been through trauma, we want to try to figure out what's right, what's true, what's right. Where's the one place that I can say for sure this is how it is? And if you look at the reason why so many different religions have battled for their beliefs is because they can all exist. Evolution can coexist with creation. Buddhism can coexist with Christianity. Your beliefs and your reality can coexist with my reality. Scientifically proven that there are multiple timelines, and all time exists now. That is coexisting. So again, prefacing what I'm about to go into, and I promise I'm really close, we're getting there, is know that what you believe to be true, what you believe to be happening, what you believe is about to come, or what you don't believe is true, or what you don't believe is happening is true for you because you choose to believe it. Multiple timelines can be happening at the same time. There can be two people in California, one experiencing a flood and one standing on dry ground. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is a creator. Whether you use a scientific term like dark matter or stargates or black holes or quantum physics or atoms and particles or the observer effect or I'm forgetting the term. It's consciousness, non-local intelligence. You can use those scientific terms. You could also use the term God, source, creator, divine, universe. It's all semantics. At the end of the day, it exists no matter what you call it. And so while we can experience many timelines, many different timelines at the same time, many different experiences, it's all about your perception. It doesn't matter what word you use. You're splitting hairs when you start to try to argue over, no, my word is right. No, my religion is right. No, my belief is right. It doesn't matter. So this leads us to where we are at today. Regardless if you choose a scientific perspective, a scholarly perspective, a spiritual perspective, a religious perspective, something is happening. And that cannot be denied. Now, the degree to which it's done with intention and by whom can be debated. There are so many rabbit holes that you could spend your entire life going down. The water is muddy. But if you pull up to a high enough perspective, you can see that things are not going well. Well, see, even that is a perspective. That's a perspective we could choose. Basically, there's been a lot of crap hidden in a closet for a long time. And it's being pulled out of the closet now. It is not necessarily getting worse now than it has been in the recent past. It's just that we are becoming aware of it. These accidents that keep happening are no longer coincidences. I am a data and fact-driven person. And there is enough mounting evidence to prove to us all, for those who have eyes to see and who are willing to hear, the cookie is crumbling. Things are falling apart. And the beauty of things falling apart is that they are also falling into place. That what we are experiencing right now is the cleanup. The wounded animal that's been backed into a corner is lashing out. It's giving it one last chance. It's doing everything it can to survive. But it won't survive. This is coming to an end. The cleanup has started. And for some people, they wanted there to be a rescuer. We were caught in the victim triangle. These people do these things to me, and therefore I can't escape. Poor me. If you're aware of the victim triangle, there's a victim, there is a perpetrator, and there is a rescuer. And you can move, we all move from all three of those when we are stuck in that triangle. The goal is to get out of the triangle. We are no longer the victim. We are sovereign beings. We have the ability and the right to move and to extract ourselves from this situation at any time. There are places you can go, even if you believe you can't. That is a belief or a construct or a prison that you have created for yourself. Now, I'm getting kind of all over the place, so I have to bring it back in. The point is, the sense of building that we are experiencing, the momentum that we are feeling is moving towards something bigger than even COVID. Many of us in 2020 felt this feeling of like, something's coming, something's coming, something's coming. Boom, COVID, lockdown. All of the nonsense with that went with that. We're not even going to go there. But what is coming this time is bigger than even that. Now, I don't know exactly what that's going to be. There's some things that are pointing in certain directions that would seem logical, but it seems that these often happen in a way that is surprising, even though we thought we would try to anticipate it. The point is, the shit is being pulled out of the closet. It's going to look messy. It's going to look scary. It's going to look dark to some. But for those of us who choose to believe there is a creator, there is an organizing energy. Even in nature, there is evidence of self-organizing energy and structures and systems. There's proof of that, even at a scientific level. We are going to be taken care of if we keep our eyes on God. Now, this is where all of my softening earlier, my prefacing, is designed to help you absorb what I just said. Because we can claim to know things and not truly live them, not embody them. But it has never been more important than now that you refrain from fear. You have two options. There really are only two options in this whole experience that we're going through: is faith or fear. If you start making choices from fear, you will make life harder for yourself and you will perpetuate issues and problems. If you choose faith, you will have a softened blow to what we are about to experience. Taking a deep breath and remembering two different people in California within feet of each other. One can be experiencing a flood and one can be experiencing dry ground. One is experiencing fear and one is experiencing faith. One is living fear and one is living faith. It's very fascinating and fun how psychology and the nervous system come into play, because that's how you know where you are. That's how you know what you're creating to some extent. Now, I don't think that anyone should bear the responsibility of all of the crap that is being pulled out of the closet right now. But what you experience going forward, or how you experience this cleanup process, is going to be very dependent on your state of being. And your nervous system will help you understand what that is. Hypervigilance, fear, relaxation, faith. We will be protected if we are so delusional and so stubborn that we refuse to see anything else but our protection, our protector. That's how we move. Moving through timelines is just moving through levels of consciousness, moving through states of being, moving from a parasympathetic to a sympathetic or vice versa. No decisions should be made out of fear. Grounding is as important as ever. Breath work to calm the nervous system. I'm going to be coming out with some tips and tricks on how to calm the nervous system, how to be regulated in the coming weeks. Just remember, it's always darkest before the dawn. Ground, be prepared, be wise, but do not act from fear. Now, the reason that this is, or one of the ways this is supported astrologically, is we have Pluto and Saturn about to change signs. The last time Pluto changed signs and moved into Capricorn was the 2008 housing crisis. The last time Saturn changed signs was in 2020 during COVID, or just before COVID. These are big, heavy-hitting planets. Pluto is known for death and rebirth, destruction. But what is key here is there is a positive and a negative side to every aspect or planet. Death leads to rebirth. That is Pluto. Saturn restriction leads to newfound freedom. So you can imagine that there's a high likelihood with both of these signs, or both of these planets changing signs in March, that there's going to be some disruption. There's going to be a feeling of death. There's going to be a feeling of restriction. That is the initial part that leads to the rebirth and the newfound freedom. Take a deep breath. No matter what happens, no matter how dark it looks outside of us, no matter how all logic points to the fact that we should freak out and dig a hole and stick our head in it, it is not true. That very shortly, I hope and pray and also believe and know that science meets spirituality. There is evidence and proof of all of these things. It is professional and scholarly to also be spiritual and aware of energy and know how to work with my creative abilities. And to anyone who wants to criticize for that, I'm sorry that you are not able to see this perspective. And I look forward to the day that you get to enjoy this as much as I do. Deep breaths. Be in your body. Remember that your entire being is a vast library of resources. We tend to use only this much, and we have all of this that can help us heal and discern and make decisions. And there's a couple of ideas that have come through this that I think that I'll share in the next week to help you tap into that resource. I think that's all I have today. This feels as complete as it can feel with the impending shifts and changes. If you are able to say, here we go, there's a little bit more. If you are able to say that you have found a term that you can align to, God, source, creator, consciousness, non-local intelligence, then that's the first step. The next step is to create a relationship with that, if you have not already. If you have already, strengthen that relationship. Ultimately, consciousness might be the best word right now, because there is something that is conscious, no matter what you call it, that is not only aware of you, but loves you deeply. You are directly connected to it, and it is connected to you. You are in it, and it is in you. It is in everything. And the answer to the solutions to the challenges, the solutions to the world's problems, the solution to how do we not just survive, but thrive through this next phase of the cleanup. The key is, the answer is direct and consistent, relentless relationship with that consciousness. Constant communication. It's as if we are 50% of the equation. Consciousness is the other 50% of the equation. Trying to do this alone, or meditation 10 minutes a day and the rest of the day is up to you, is going to be hard. The solution to peace, the solution to freedom, the solution to all of the crap that needs to be cleaned up is our relationship with the divine, is our relationship with our creator, is our constant connection and communication with consciousness. Find ways throughout your day, whether it's music or reading the Bible or listening to people who dig into what does the Bible really mean. And I'm not saying all of the Bible is right. I do believe that human error happens regardless of any situation. It is always a factor. And so whether or not they intentionally misinterpreted or sometimes they accidentally misinterpreted, using your discernment, it is between you and God. That's where we tap into this level of discernment that tells us what is right and wrong, what to do next. How do we stay safe? How do we take care of our family? How do we thrive? Constant communication. It's almost as if I can't quite find words strong enough to illustrate the constant ping. It's a back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I'm not claiming to be great at it. I certainly have gotten better. I'll say that, it used to be that maybe I would meditate if I was lucky once a day. Certainly there were times where it was once a week, once a month. Now in this energy, the last few weeks especially, it's just been filling my mind and my day, music playing in the background, motivational videos that constantly keep talking about God. It keeps me connected. It keeps me in line. It's like the horse that needs the blinders. Otherwise, they're going to get distracted and cause problems. Now is the time to create that relationship. Now is the time to strengthen that ping relationship. So if you have tips and tricks on how to do that, comment below. That would be super helpful for the rest of the community here. With that, I will close. Speaking of community, we would love to see you in the New Earth Construction team. We meet every week live, or most weeks, probably about 3 Fridays a month. Otherwise, I'm putting all of my courses in there, all of the resources that we have available to help you heal the trauma that holds you back from your purpose. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I should also add this, and this will make it complete. The real solution after your connection with Source is your purpose. We are here to create heaven on earth. The old system is crumbling. We are here to create the new system. We need you. There's a reason you have those gifts and those talents and those interests and those dreams. They were put on your heart for a reason. So the New Earth Construction Team community is there to help you heal the blocks, the trauma, the conditioning, the programming that holds you back so that you can identify your purpose and manifest abundance through it. So we'd love to see you there. The longest energy reading I have ever done. I love you guys so much. I'm going to go now. Please do make sure you like, subscribe, and share if you know of anybody who could benefit from this. Otherwise, I will see you on the next video.